Thank you very much. My name is Micheal O'Dwyer, and I'm from the Environmental Protection Agency. My presentation today is going to serve as an introduction to the area of COVID-19 restrictions and their impact on air quality. I will present an Irish example using one urban traffic monitoring site, and then I'll talk a little bit about the further work needed in this area, which will set up the talks following mine from academic researchers who are presenting today. Since the coronavirus and COVID-19 emerged, the scientific community very quickly started linking air quality and health impacts with various aspects of the worldwide pandemic. Some of these had a positive slant and some had a negative slant. This was very much seized upon by the media, who were looking for a story, be it a good one or a bad one. Much of the focus on improvements in air quality arose after the European Space Agency released images taken by this satellite, the Copernicus Sentinel 5P, which is an Earth observation satellite. It can observe concentrations of tropospheric nitrogen dioxide over long time periods. ESA released short clips such as this one, showing the reduction in NO2 in northern Italy as the country went into lockdown. There was also dramatic images produced from China showing decreases in nitrogen dioxide during their lockdown. However, this period also coincided with their Lunar New Year celebrations, which generally brings a reduction in air pollution anyway, so they've got to be tempered a little bit. The Copernicus Sentinel satellite is still being used to assess air quality in this way and is providing further evidence of continued lower levels of nitrogen dioxide across Europe as people restrict their movements due to the pandemic. And so to our own restrictions and their impacts on air quality. We have to ask the question, did we see an impact, particularly on the two most important pollutants in terms of health impacts? That is namely nitrogen dioxide, as I've mentioned before, and particulate matter, or PM. So just to review, quickly review the timelines of restrictions. On the 1st of March, Google took the step of closing its Dublin office. That was week 10 of the year. So that really can be, I suppose, taken as the start of the introduction of restrictions. On the 12th of March, the schools closed, and followed very quickly by the 15th, when pubs and restaurants were closed. And then on the 27th of March, we went into full lockdown, which was week 13. However, that happened on a Friday of week 13, so it was the end of the week. So really, it was week 14 by the time we'd expect to see an impact on air quality, really, of the lockdown restrictions. And the lockdown itself then lasted until the 18th of May, which is week 21, when it went into what is known as phase 1, really, of easing of restrictions. That was followed by easing of restrictions phase 2, which happened on the 8th of June, which is week 24. And then on the 29th of June, really, we had the accelerated easing of restrictions, which is week 27 of the year. And that's really in the period that we're in now, which is a return to normality in some sense. This is the monitoring site whose data I'll be presenting today. It's our urban traffic site at St. John's Road West in Dublin. It's across the road from Euston Station, and it's obviously very close to a very busy road. And so to some of the data that we observed, this is weekly average nitrogen dioxide data at this site where the greatest impact was observed. This is obviously due to the direct impact that restrictions have on movement and on transport-related emissions. Visual decrease can be observed at this location, coinciding with the introduction of restrictions around, as I said, week 11, and a dramatic decrease then with the introduction of the lockdown around week 13, 14. The magnitude of the decrease at this site was approaching 50%. And there's also an apparent increase, which can be observed with the easing of restrictions from week 21. These two graphs are looking at concentration versus time of day at the same Dublin urban traffic site. The top graph especially shows the classic diurnal pattern of traffic emissions, which is the 2 periods of commuting that you see during the day. So the top graph is the weeks before the introduction of restrictions, and the bottom graph are the weeks 13 to 20, which is the lockdown, the main lockdown. There appears to be an interesting change to the diurnal pattern during the lockdown. Obviously, concentrations are lower, but there's still a morning peak. However, it's not as sharp, and there's a much less noticeable evening traffic peak. So perhaps this might reflect the continued emissions of maybe public transport, such as buses and commercial vehicles, etc., during the morning for deliveries and such. But then, not really an evening rush hour peak. Again, these graphs are concentrations versus time of day, with the lockdown period at the top graph and the period to today encompassing easing of restrictions. The graph at the bottom shows something like the normal diurnal pattern, but again, there's much lower concentrations than we'd expect. Here, I've compared the annual average concentration of nitrogen dioxide versus time for the years 2019 at the top graph and 2020 year to date in the bottom graph. So in 2019, we had an exceedance of the EU annual average limit value for nitrogen dioxide at this particular site. And so far this year, we're below the annual average limit value, which is very striking in terms of a reduction of traffic pollution. Now switching to particulate matter and the impact of restrictions. Again, looking at the urban traffic site at St. John's Road West in Dublin, there just doesn't seem to be the same impact on this type of pollution. At least it's not obvious. This may be to be expected, as transport and traffic emissions are not a large source of PM in Ireland. So with that, there are remaining questions and issues. A deeper analysis is needed really to get the full picture of this period. What I've presented today does not account for other variables such as weather, other variables such as traffic patterns that may be normal for certain times of the year, like reduced traffic that you would expect during holiday periods, etc. And also, going back to particulate matter, that's heavily impacted by the weather, as you can imagine. So was it really unaffected? Maybe it increased, but we just don't see it in these particular graphs. So that's why I suppose we've engaged with 3 academic research groups from 3 different universities who are today going to present some different options to analyze this type of information in a different and deeper way, with the intention of combining our efforts to a truer picture of the impact on air quality from COVID-19 restrictions. So really, it's to introduce the area behind this and show that there's work needed to follow up on this. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation today. Just remember, if you have any questions on any of this, you may put them forward through the app, and we'll try and answer them in the question and answer section. Thank you.